remember to do the recording. That is always my biggest thing. I always forget. Um, all right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have a few more people sign on, but first and foremost, thank you all for being here and being on time. I am so excited to host our wonderful alum, Katrina Stacey. Before we do full introductions, I want to let you all know my name is Casey Miller. For those who don't know me, I am the Career Services Program Director for the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources at UMD. So I work for both the University Career Center and the College of Ag and Natural Resources. So if at any point you would like some help with your major career, job search, internship search, anything in that space, please know that I and others in the UCC are here to help you all with that. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Katrina Stacey. So Katrina, would you mind? Oh, actually, I forgot this. We have a little bit of housekeeping. I want to give a rundown of kind of how tonight's going to go. That would be helpful. So I have a group of questions that I'm going to ask, but if at any point any of you have either clarifying questions or something that you want to add in while we're talking about that topic, please feel free to pop them into the chat and we'll try to incorporate them. And then at the end, we have some time built in for you to ask your questions as well. So I don't anticipate us having like a huge unruly group tonight. So if you want to take yourself off mute and actually ask the question, that is totally cool. But also feel free to put things in the chat. Okay, now I'll get back to what I was saying. Katrina, could you please share your current role, the organization, and a little bit about what ag communications means, especially obviously in your line of work?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again so much, Casey, for having me tonight. And hello, everyone. I'm excited to share a little bit about my work, my role, and my perspective on ag communications with you guys. And I'm an open book, so feel free to ask questions and connect with me afterwards. But I am currently the Senior Manager of Communications and Marketing for Field to Market. Field to Market is a member-based nonprofit organization that unites the entire agricultural supply chain around sustainability. And so what I mean by that is we have everyone from growers to the brands and retailers, the Pepsis and Walmarts of the world, and everyone in between together to talk about sustainability. So again, grower organizations, those brands and retailers at the end, but also the agribusinesses, the people buying to and selling to and from farmers, and the other nonprofits in this space, the environmental defense funds and Nature Conservancy as examples, and then researchers, public institutions like NRCS, again, all together to talk about sustainability in agriculture. So thinking about ag communication for me, what that entails is quite a number of things, given that I'm communicating about agriculture to those 5 different groups that are across the supply chain. So it's a lot of sharing the work of farmers, their success stories, their needs, all within that sustainability lens, knowing that for sustainability programs to work, it has to work for the farmers first who are growing the food. So it's a lot of sharing their success stories and what they're doing. It's also sharing information about programs that are available to farmers or to other elements of the supply chain, and then also about sustainable agriculture broadly to the general public. Why is it important? Why should people care? And why agriculture is important to help address those larger climate goals, natural resource goals, that a lot of people are talking about.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, so a little bit more specific into that nitty-gritty, could you provide an overview of what your day-to-day looks like? And are there busy seasons in your line of work?
Yep. I will start out by saying there really isn't a typical day to day, especially as it relates to communications. I think that's even a more common comment to make because in communications, you have to be able to adjust really quickly to things that can happen, late breaking news, requests to be a part of an interview and that you need to pivot for to help support staff for, social needs, things like that. Needs can evolve really quickly. So, that makes the day-to-day things a little bit more challenging. But even for my typical role, a typical day-to-day is even more difficult in a sense because Field to Market is a small but mighty team, we like to say, and I'm a comm shop of one. So I'm a jack of all trades, if you will. So that day-to-day piece is a little less common. But some things I do every day before we talk about maybe like a week-to-week basis is I'm always checking social media. I'm always trying to keep track of news. Both of those things for ways for me to keep up to date on things that could impact Field to Market, things that we should be paying attention to, things we're mentioned in so that we can amplify those kinds of things. I'm checking that stuff every day. But then maybe thinking from a week to week standpoint, things I'm always doing probably. I'm making social media posts. I'm getting email blasts. We have member newsletters. We have larger stakeholder blasts, press releases, things like that. I'm prepping some kind of email to go out to an audience. I'm meeting with our team to learn about what they're working on because, to be an effective communicator, you have to know what your team is doing so that you can talk about it. I'm meeting with stakeholders to kind of explore shared endeavors that we can do, working on shared goals. I'm updating a website or a web page. I'm planning out future campaigns. I'm preparing staff for speaking events. So a lot of things that probably happen in a given week, and kind of depend on the season, which leads me into the last piece of your question, Casey. As far as busy seasons, we are currently in one right now. For me, both in my current role and in the role I had before this, which was also a nonprofit, event season is the busy season. For Field to Market, we have two big in-person events every year, one in June and one in November. So the months leading up to that gets really hectic in addition to normal roles, prepping, finding speakers, prepping PowerPoints and scripts and all of that. It gets to be pretty hectic. But I think busy seasons can even be sometimes short spurts too. If you think about webinars, other virtual events, we do a number of those throughout the year. And then that like week prior can be pretty hectic depending on the content and prepping for that in addition to everything else. And then the other thing I think about as far as busy season is related to programs. Depending on where you go, you might have different programmatic areas that have more communications needs. So, for example, we have a leadership awards program that happens every year. And in the fall, that's when we're working on prepping the stories. It gets a little more busy in terms of me scheduling a lot of interviews and really writing long form stories, all for those to be announced at the end of the year. So, yeah.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about the two big events that you plan in June and November?
Yep. So we have, as a member-based organization, we bring our members together twice a year. So that first one is in June. It's what we call our annual meeting. It's about 2.5 days of a lot of different business meetings to accomplish the needs of a governance-based organization. But then a lot of breakout sessions and main stage sessions to teach or educate the audience on different elements of sustainability. Since we bring together that full ag value chain, it's really important for us to make space for each of those segments to talk to each other. To that point about farmers, for sustainability to work, it has to work for farmers. A big thing that we do is try to make sure that the brands and retailers, the agribusinesses that are at that other end of the supply chain can talk to farmers to actually learn what it means to farm, like what that looks like, because so many people are detached from that, and it's important to have them learn and hear that experience, which ties to in June we also have a farm tour. So again, that's 2.5 days. And then in November, we have a 1.5 day member meeting tied to the Sustainable Agriculture Summit, which is a large 2-day event that Field to Market co-hosts with other parts of agriculture, with the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy, U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and a number of other organizations like that in our space. And it is the largest sustainability conference in the U.S. We had a record-breaking 1,000 people last year. So it's a really exciting event. And yeah, we'll be in Anaheim in, shockingly, less than a month.
Don't tell me that it's almost November.
Right?
That's amazing though. That sounds awesome. All right, I'm going to take you back to your education. Can you please provide some background on your career and educational journey? So including any skills, decisions that you made, experiences that led you to the role that you have now.
Yep. So I was an ENSP major, environmental science and policy major with AGNR, and graduated in 2019. And my concentration was in environment and agriculture. Whenever I talk about my coursework, I like to kind of step back to when I started at UMD. I started knowing I wanted to do something in environmental science, but I had no idea what I wanted that to be. So I spent my freshman year trying to figure out what I wanted my concentration to be. And long story short, ended up stumbling into realizing I loved ag. I was writing a case study paper about sustainability in agriculture and got to learn about cover crops and no-till and things like that. And it just stuck with me. And so I decided, okay, I want to be in agriculture. But then I don't know what I want to do within that. So I spent the rest of my time at UMD trying out different aspects of that ultimately led me to communications. Um, and within that story, I always want to stress the importance of internships and volunteer work because that's what helped me figure out what path I wanted to go in. I thought maybe I wanted to do research. Did that for a time and realized, nope, I don't want to be in the field during the summer doing research. No, maybe not for me. Tried out policy. I did some legal work for one point. Tried out a bunch of different things, and the thing that stuck out that I loved was communication. So that's where I ended up in this field, how I ended up here. Um, as far as kind of that journey in terms of like the companies I worked for, my job before this was with the National Association of Conservation Districts, NACD, if I reference them again. I was their communications coordinator for about 3 years. But that job I got because of an internship. I did an internship with them and I kept in touch with my job and my boss at that internship and my future mentor, and that led to this that job as communications coordinator. But then if you back up even more, I got that internship because I was a part of Agriculture Futures of America, a leadership conference, where I networked and I met someone who was on the board at NACD who encouraged me to apply to an internship. And so if you just like keep taking steps back, everything lines up and it just really gets at the importance of networking and internships and those experiences that ultimately impact the role that you end up having in the future.
Thank you for that shout out to AFA. Our delegates are leaving in just a few weeks.
That's right.
I know. So, any of the students on the call who don't know what AFA is, I will pop a link into the chat so you can read a little bit more about it. But this really awesome leadership conference that happens every November in Kansas City. Also, I would love to highlight and thank you for talking about having experiences tell you what you don't want. I talk often with a lot of students about the importance of learning what you don't want and how it can feel crappy having an experience that you don't enjoy, but that's such helpful information for a lot of reasons. And being able to parse out the piece for you, right, was communications. That's really where you enjoyed it. So that's a great point.
Exactly.
All right, so some technical skill development. What resources and or training did you use to become proficient in communications? And are there any specific, is there anything specific to agriculture in general that you would recommend?
I've done a lot of like, there's so many free resources out there. I've done a lot of webinars and certifications and online training. Um, my first boss really encouraged me to lean into that. I obviously was really interested in communications, but I didn't take advantage of one of the questions I know we'll get to is what you wish you did differently. I wish I had taken more advantage of journalism classes and some like art-based skills to kind of hone some of those pieces that are now really would be really important to what I'm doing now. Um, but I've still gotten that experience through those online certification classes and webinars, things like that. Sean Academy is just one of many examples. That's who I used. I did a lot of like Adobe related classes. that helped me. I think those are free. Canva, for example, has a lot of free resources. So there are a lot of other things that you can try outside of UMD coursework too, that can help you hone some skills. And I've certainly utilized those a ton. Um, Within agriculture, I had the opportunity 2 years ago at this point to go to something called the Ag Media Summit. It's an event that happens every year, and it essentially just brings together a bunch of ag communicators to talk about share skills. There's a lot of breakout sessions where you can learn new techniques, things like that. That was really valuable and very, very ag specific. Um, and
Are
then
students invited to that? Sorry, side note.
I think so. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I met some students while I was there, although I should have
Okay.
fact checked that. So sorry
That's okay.
about that.
We'll take you at your word.
Um, and then one other thing, it's not really a like something to do, but something to always keep in mind is be open to trial and error and feedback, because that's also really been critical for how I've grown. Um, you're probably going to have a supervisor who reviews your work. Once you leave UMD, you're going to have a supervisor who's going to review your work. Ask for feedback, take it, figure out how to improve. Don't be afraid to try new things. Um, there's just so much trial and error, and lean into that. That's okay.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's wonderful advice. All right, so some challenges, some rewards. What are some of the biggest challenges and or rewards you've encountered in your career?
I'll start with challenges and then end on positive notes.
Yeah.
Challenges, as it relates specifically to communications, something that I struggle with frequently, is it can be hard to get everyone on the same page. Especially again, thinking in my current role, we interact with a lot of different stakeholders, different companies that have competing priorities. So even though they might be interested in or all agree on sustainability, how they want to talk about that, the language they want to use, their brand guidelines, they're all very different. So merging those into a communications piece that Field to Market is putting out can sometimes be challenging. So learning that art of achieving alignment is a challenge, but it's possible. I promise it happens. Other challenges, though, too, maybe not as specific to communications, but just more broadly, time management. And I guess that is tied to communications when you think about events, things like that, that communicators are heavily involved in. Around busy times, it can be tough to manage all of your tasks, especially if you're with a smaller team. And then from a nonprofit lens, funding challenges exist for sure. With grant funding, things like that, changes in where revenue is coming from, it can all be really impactful. So it's tough to navigate that, but again, all possible.
Mhm.
Um, as far as successes, the first success or rewards that I would call out is with my first job at NACD. I led a series of soil health case studies. I was the lead on a soil health case study project where I got to interview 25 different farmers and put together videos for each of them to talk about the benefits, economic benefits, and otherwise to their sustainability practices.
Mhm.
Um, and that was a really big report, big endeavor. And when that finally came out, that was very, very successful. It was rewarding to see that come through. I already mentioned the Sustainable Agriculture Summit, so I won't talk about that. And then thinking ahead, one thing I'm excited for and will be very rewarding when it happens is we are updating our website. So I'm leading our work with our contractor in redesigning our web pages and figuring out our needs. So a couple different things in different elements of communication.
Nice. So you mentioned grants. Do you, knowing that you all are a small team, ever have to participate in the grant writing process?
We do, although I do not in
Okay.
particular, aside from perhaps some proofing. Obviously do that with a lot of our things. We're also starting to get more into the grant writing process. Again, we're a member-based organization, so most of our revenue comes from membership dues,
Okay.
but we realize we really need to diversify our revenue stream. So we have a few grants here and there, but we are doing more of that. While I do not work in the grant writing, though, I have been heavily involved in making like funding one-pagers of sorts for the teams who are working with or talking with potential funders to share a little bit about the work that could be funded to see what aligns with that particular funder's goals.
Could you tell us a little bit about that process of creating something like that?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a lot of working with the team member, full team who would be working in that endeavor. Um, and lots of iteration to figure out exactly how to communicate that and where those funds could be used if we were able to find a funder. Thinking in particular, field to market, we have a couple different elements. We convene folks, a lot of the events that I already talked about, but then we also have a lot of science and technology work. And obviously, I'm not a scientist, nor am I heavily involved in tech. So, writing fact sheets or funding one-pagers for those was a lot of communication with our science and tech team to figure out, okay, first off, what do you need help with? Secondly, how do we communicate that effectively in terms that most people will understand?
Mhm.
And then how do we beautify it, make
Yeah.
it really seem like a really wonderful package that people, of course, should want to support.
Mhm. Awesome. That was great. Thanks. Um, okay. So networking and mentorship. How important has we've touched on this a little bit, but how important has networking and or mentorship been in your career? What strategies do you recommend for building a professional network? And have you had any mentors who significantly influenced your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I jumped the gun, so sorry.
That is A-okay. I love it. It was a
But yes,
preview.
so important. Um, it's really important to be making connections with people, whether they become your mentors or not. Making connections with folks in this field is so important to help you learn to explore new potential opportunities, not only for your like career growth, but also new opportunities for wherever your company, your organization. You never know who you might run into who could be involved in a program that you end up partnering on or could give you inspiration for a new piece of communication. And then, of course, there's always that other element of helping you find the next step in your career too. But those connections are so important for so many reasons. It is also really important to find mentors that you can lean on. Um, and it's important that you not only have those mentors, but you also keep communicating with them. Like a successful mentor-mentee relationship has to involve communication so that they know what you're doing, what you're working on, so that they can help, not just a random cold call once a year. And that's something that I realized really quickly was something that I needed to do. I stopped being in touch as much with my first mentor. And when I reached back out, I was like, wait, I have to like really fill her in on the backstory of what I've been working on.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's definitely been a thing that I've been doing moving forward. And yeah, my first big mentor that I would flag is my first boss. She was really pivotal in not only helping me learn communications, experience the space, but also gain confidence in my abilities. It can be very different or jarring to go from coursework to working for a company or an organization. And I was very skeptical of my abilities. And she really helped me gain confidence. Helped me learn I don't need to apologize for things I have no control over, those kinds of things, in addition to everything else. So that was really important, and that just an example, but mentors are super, super important. Um, Tips, I would say force yourself to network. I know networking can be so, so draining. Even now, after a networking event, I have to come home and sit on my couch and snuggle with my dog and not talk to anyone for a little bit. I'm also an introvert, so that obviously plays into it. But force yourself to network, make connections at events, and then follow up. Making meaningful connections really honestly happens in that follow up. Do whatever you can do to try to remember the conversation you had so that when you email them because you've gotten their business card or you connect with them on LinkedIn, you can say, I really enjoyed meeting you at XYZ event and hearing about whatever initiative or program or whatever it was that you talked about. That can help make an even stronger connection. and then also be really active on LinkedIn. I have seen that grow a lot in the 6 or so years since I graduated. And people use LinkedIn a ton, and it's a really valuable way to hear about what other people are doing and then like get your face in front of other people by liking and commenting on their stuff. Um, Not only doing that, but also posting about things that you're doing so that your network can hear what you've been up to. And then also don't be afraid to try to make connections with people that you might not have met before, but you have mutual connections with, or you just have seen their work before and you really are inspired by it or interested in learning more. And I know I've gotten a number of like cold call messages from people that I don't know, but people asking for just advice because they've seen what I've been doing and are just interested in the field. Um, and I always love answering those and providing input. And I'm sure so many other people love doing that too. So I would encourage you to do that as well.
You answered every single one of my follow-up questions as you're going through. I was like, oh, let me ask about this. And you got it. I was going to ask you, how do you feel when somebody reaches out to you? Because I get that is advice that I provide to students all the time. And, I can just see the skepticism, right? Of like, oh, I don't know if I want
Yeah.
to do that. Are they really going to answer? Right.
Hmm.
So, and I will say, since being in my role with AGNR in particular, I can speak to the AGNR alumni. You all are wonderful. I have rarely had a no response. I've had a few no responses, but not many. And the only time I've ever gotten a no from a question or a request or anything has always been like, I'm really sorry. I just am not available at that time. I would love to do it another time. Let's set up another time. Right.
Yeah.
So like you've got a good group. Like it's a really good community, right? It's a really wonderful community. So for all the students on the call and any that listen when we after to the recording, like use the people from UMD. Like people enjoy being able to talk about their time at Maryland, their time in AGNR, right? Like it is good, it's helpful, and you'll probably want to be one of those people someday who someone reaches out to.
Hmm. Agreed.
Thank you for all that. Okay, so looking to the future, where do you see the future of work within this field heading, and what advice would you give to individuals looking to enter into this field?
Something that makes me feel good is that I know communications is always going to be important. Companies, organizations are always going to need communication staff to be communicating about their work, whether that be social media or updating a website or making resources or like the list goes on and on. There will never not be a need to communicate about what someone's doing, and you need effective communicators, us, to accomplish that. So that's always exciting and makes me feel comfortable about our field. But obviously, it doesn't mean that things won't change or priorities won't shift or the future might look a little bit different than what it does now. Um, and I say that because, first off, communications is always changing. Think about the new platforms that exist that didn't a little while ago. Um, Field to Market doesn't have a TikTok, but I know of plenty of other folks in the field, plenty of my other colleagues who had needed to make a TikTok because it was suitable for their audiences. Um, and so you have to be willing to change with the times. Also, terminologies can change. That's something that we've realized a lot, or I've had to learn a lot about in this past year, for example. This was my first big like administration change.
Mm.
And with that came new terminology to use just in the space of agriculture. And I think that happens anytime. But we moved from talking about climate smart agriculture to talking about conservation agriculture, things like that. Um, you just got to be willing to adjust and update terminology, and not even just for reasons like that, but also like science and things like that change.
Yep.
So how to effectively talk about an issue or a subject is going to change just based on what comes out in that front. Um, and then I always should also mention AI, that has grown a lot. So the future is probably going to include AI in some way, shape, or form. What that looks like, who knows? But that has grown a lot. We've seen, a lot of needs to like verify data, verify what you're saying. I can see that increasing a lot. So who knows?
Yeah.
The second part of your question was advice. Tied to that, I would say, I think, like I kind of touched on a little bit already, keep up with new technology.
Mhm.
Find companies and organizations that you like or that are within the field that you're interested in, and subscribe to their newsletters so you can stay informed on what they're doing. That's really valuable, can inform what you want to do, what you talk about, where you try to go, all of that. Also keep stock of communications pieces that you like, depending on the type of communications you go into. You might not be a jack of all trades person like me. You might be more focused on design or focused on PR, who knows? But whatever your passion or interest is, keep stock of what other people are doing because it can always give you new ideas. You obviously won't copy and paste exactly, but it's been really helpful for me. For example, if I am just reusing the same designs over and over again and I need a refresh, but I remember I saw this really cool newsletter that adopted some tactic, it can kind of turn my wheels and help me try something new. So I would say kind of, like I said, take stock of ideas that you like. And then more like fluffy is remain open and curious. I think that's true for any field, but again, especially with communications where things are changing, things can happen really, really quickly. Um, it's important for you to remain open to new things and also ask a lot of questions. I think I said this earlier, but to be an effective communicator, you have to ask questions. You need to know the subject matter, even just at a base level. And so you have to be curious and ask those questions so that you then can communicate effectively about whatever it is that you're talking about.
Seems like a really common theme is like curiosity and openness to learning,
Yeah,
right? Like you are going to
exactly.
have to constantly change, learn new things, have no ego in that, like, you're not going to know these high level scientific whatever.
Yep.
Explain it to me so that I can then explain it to the even more lay person, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
yep, I love that. So you mentioned AI. Do you use any generative AI tools in your work? Or are you anti-generative AI or somewhere in between?
I have a little bit. It is a moral conundrum for me, I will say. It's been really hard. I've tried very hard to steer clear of it, but sometimes um, with tight deadlines, it's been helpful to even just like start a brainstorming process.
Yeah.
But I don't use it much. But I do also know it's a valuable tool. So I don't know. I can't necessarily say I'm for or against because there are arguments on all sides. From a personal standpoint, I try not to, but that doesn't mean I haven't.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. Thank you. All right. Reflection. Looking back on your own career path and entry into this field, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
I actually think I said this earlier, but I'll reiterate it again. Take advantage of the courses available to you at UMD. Again, just kind of based on when I realized I want to do communications, or was more sure in that. Um, I didn't get a chance to do that much, but take advantage of journalism courses or courses in the art school that can help you kind of explore new design techniques or get you familiar with Adobe, whatever that element of communications is that you're really interested in. Take advantage of that. And then I wish I had encouraged myself or forced myself to go outside of my comfort zone sooner. Um, I think that's how you can achieve like new great things is forcing you outside of the typical day-to-day, typical designs you're doing, typical ways of thinking, and also help you to be a real leader in communications for wherever you end up. Yeah, you got to go out of your comfort zone a little bit.
I love that. Yep. I think another theme that you have talked about a few times throughout is like kind of being a sponge, right? Get a lot of different experiences, pick out what makes sense, be curious and open. I think that is wonderful advice. So thank you. So students, this is the end of my question. So I would like to open it up to you all. You are welcome to put questions into the chat. You are welcome to take yourself off mute. And we will go from there. Have at it.
Hi. Thank you so much for for joining this webinar tonight. I'm really finding it very helpful. Um, you mentioned a little bit about like when you were talking about some of your roles in your position, that includes social media marketing. So I was wondering like which communication channels you use most often and what do you find to be the most effective for the projects you work on? I guess that could also be like the newsletters and press releases that you do. But yeah, I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, great question, Maya. Happy to answer that. Field to market, we use LinkedIn, X, and I stuttered because I'm still trying to stop using Twitter. LinkedIn, X, and we just launched a Facebook, not just 8 or 9 months ago. We get most of our engagement through LinkedIn, and that's by nature of the members that we have. It's a lot of like sustainability professionals within different organizations. So I found LinkedIn to be the most beneficial. Um, and that was a departure from what I had known at my previous job at NACD, and I should say National Association of Conservation Districts. They're a nonprofit organization that represents the like 3,000 plus conservation districts nationwide. So their audience is a lot of farmers and like conservation district staff that work directly with farmers. So there, um, we used Facebook a lot because that was the platform that a lot of farmers were utilizing, and that was where we were mostly targeting. So going from Facebook to LinkedIn was a little jarring when I started at Field to Market a couple years ago. And so it's just important to like know your audience, right? And then tailor your time and efforts to those. Um, I wouldn't do a paid ad campaign, for example, on Facebook right now because we don't have that much reach there, but I would consider it for LinkedIn, and that would have been reversed at my old job.
Okay, Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Mhm.
And I had just one other question. You mentioned a little bit about how in some of like the meetings and the events you do, there's a focus on like how to make like complex agricultural or scientific topics like understandable for the general audience, like how to communicate some of those like complicated ideas and terms. And I was wondering like what are some of the things or like tips or advice or ways that you try to go about that?
Mhm. It's a good question, and it's always tough to navigate, to be honest, or it's like a learning process as you're learning about what that difficult, air quote, subject is that you're trying to figure out a better way to communicate about. I typically spend some time with the team who's telling me about this great work and really try to nail down or hone in on like what the takeaway is. Obviously, the process, thinking about research, for example, the process is super important and shouldn't be looked over necessarily. But a lot of times, what people want to hear first is like what that result is, what the action item is. And so I try to start there and figure out what that is and then kind of brainstorm what that might mean. If it's a like super scientific term, okay, let's brainstorm some synonyms or things that could help people understand what this means. Um, and then walk backwards. Like if there's additional information that could be helpful, let's brainstorm that. I've also found that in a lot of those conversations, folks tend to lean like very text heavy. So when you think about like actual designs and resources, social media graphics, the reports, things like that, one pagers, I should say, I spend a lot of time kind of again parsing out what the big pieces are and make that the focal point, and then have that supplemental information ready. Um, but you've got to find out what those like golden nuggets are and then kind of go from there.
Awesome, thank you. I like that. The yeah, focusing on the golden nuggets. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm gonna go with the assumption that there are no other questions. I'll keep talking for a second in case somebody's typing in the chat. I'll fill in the silence while in case somebody's typing. But Katrina, I want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate all of this wonderful insight that you've provided. For our students still in the call, I did put into the chat a link to information on AFA. So they have a variety of different experiences in addition to the Leaders Conference called Institutes that are industry specific and awesome. Thank you, Katrina. Also, Katrina's included her Gmail in the chat. So if you are able to reach out, I would highly suggest it. Remember this wonderful advice of networking. This is the perfect example and perfect time for you to reach out.
Find me on LinkedIn and add me there too. Happy to.
Yes. I was going to ask you, I was like, do you use LinkedIn often? Would you suggest it? And then you went right in with, yes, I use it all the time. Perfect. I would say, especially in a communication field, I have been asked the question a surprising number of times by students who want to go into a comm field of like, do I need a LinkedIn? I'm like, yes, most definitely in this field, without a doubt. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Of course. It can be really hard. I struggle too sometimes in keeping my LinkedIn up to date with what I'm doing. It's very easy to kind of forget to do that, but it is really important. So even in your undergrad work, like post about what you're doing. If you've done a really cool project, doing cool research, like, and you went to a conference, it's really helpful for people to see what you're up to. So just can be hard to remember to do that, but try. And I'm certainly not perfect either.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, I won't keep anybody any longer than we need to be together. But Katrina, once again, thank you so much. And have a wonderful evening and good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.